Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Co-host Daniel McAdams is with me today, and it's good to see you, Daniel.
Good to see you back in Clute, sir.
Very good. It's good to be back and try to solve the problems of the world. But it looks like they keep coming. The president, I think, probably has a little sincerity in wanting to wind down a war or two, but either he's very weak on his beliefs or he's highly influenced by others, because here we are today thinking about another adventure. At the same time, he has a few problems on his plate. Syria is not going well. Iraq is not going well. We're still very much involved, and troops are filtering back in. But today, even before our program, there was the announcement. The president gave an announcement about have to change the plans. We can't walk out. We've had so many great successes in Afghanistan. We're going to have to keep these troops here a lot longer than we really wanted. But really, one of the things I wanted to talk about was a Guardian report that came out in detail about what's happening in Cameroon. You know, all of a sudden, Cameroon's on the table, and we've heard about it, Boca Raton, for a long time, and all of a sudden now. But this article really tells us a little bit about what's going on and why all of a sudden the president feels a need that we have to be involved, which for people who even lean slightly toward non-intervention should be appalled.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's funny you talk about Afghanistan. The neocons have framed the issue so successfully that the reason Iraq is a disaster is because we didn't stay in. So that's why the president, I think, feels compelled to stay in. But as you say, a new adventure. The president announced yesterday, and this is, I know you appreciate how he did this. He sent a note to Congress saying, hey, I'm sending a few hundred U.S. troops to Cameroon. We've got to fight Boko Haram, this terrible ISIS-affiliated group. So just wanted to let you know and talk to you later. You know, forget the Constitution. And
they didn't have a debate in the Congress. we used to do that at least a little bit, have a debate. But no, I think that is our biggest problem. The president is not exactly our friend when it comes to non-intervention, but neither is the Congress, and that really is a big problem. But what do they think is the article was broad-based, and the first sentence that I read on there, he mentioned blowback, and I thought, well, there was a time when you were not allowed to say blowback. Of course, he used the term blowback in a generalized sense, not exactly blowback to America, but to America's interest, because all of a sudden, if you look at these maps, you can see where did it all start? It started with Libya. And who was responsible for the blow up of Libya? Well, we had to get rid of a bad guy. And now we have lots of bad guys, and more killing than ever. So Gaddafi's gone. And all of a sudden, even back immediately afterwards, we talked about where are the weapons going? You could see in the neighboring countries, but they've gone a lot further than that. And I think this was the point. One thing happens, you make one mistake, you think you're doing humanitarian, relief for people, and it ends up causing the disability of thousands more, and the need for humanitarian relief becomes so much greater.
What's interesting, this article is actually something that I included in something I wrote last night about the president's decision. This article actually was written in 2014 by Seamus Milne of The Guardian, and it's so accurate. It said that, from Libya, these weapons escaped all of the Islamic fighters that the U.S. relied on to overthrow Gaddafi. It helped them. They took their weapons after Gaddafi was gone, and they spread to the winds, and some of them went to Mali, and if you remember, it was just about a year afterward that the French and the UK started bombing Mali, because they ended up there. They went to Niger, and then they ended up in Cameroon, and Boko Haram benefited from these weapons. Some also went up to Syria. So this is, a year ago really predicted that the U.S. would be involved. And as Milne points out, the U.S. military is active in, I think, 49 out of 54 states in Africa, countries in Africa.
Yeah, and this whole thing of the spreading of weapons is a big deal. Even if we don't lose one soldier in Cameroon, you know, that's good that we don't lose one soldier, but a lot of people are going to die, and a lot of people are going to die as a consequence of weapons. And I wonder what percent of the weapons that Gaddafi had that were probably American made. He probably had a mixture, but I'll bet you there's a lot of American weapons. I mean, the weapons we send into Syria now to help our so-called friends, the true friendly rebels that are going to overthrow Assad, the weapons end up in the people who would kill Americans.
Well, Josh Landis, who's at the University of Oklahoma, is an expert on Syria. He estimated that between 60 and 80% of the weapons the U.S. sends to moderates in Syria end up in the hands of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So that is pretty significant.
Yeah, and yet it doesn't seem to even ask people to pause for a minute. And like today, we see this escalation in Cameroon, and we see the re-escalation in Afghanistan. And I haven't seen any, even with the presidential debates, I mean, they allude to some of these problems, but they never really talk about it. And in another sense, they never seem to calculate into the big problem, and that is debt, the inability to finance welfare warfare. They never seem to ever want to calculate, even by conservative Republicans, or especially conservative Republicans, because they you know, the leadership, part of the reason why there's such division there is they want to get they want to get rid of sequestration. Mm-hmm. They want to make sure that there's not even the slightest hint of a cut in the increases, and because you know, we have to make the world safe democracy, and the results aren't very good.
Well, you know, the other thing, besides the troops that Obama is sending in, he is sending in some Predator drones. Supposedly, they're only going to conduct surveillance. But if, you know, as I wrote in the piece that I wrote yesterday, if you think that they're not going to start firing weapons, you've not been paying attention. You know, interesting today, I don't know if you saw this, there was a blockbuster report out in The Intercept. It was some new Snowden released files about the president's drone program in Afghanistan. And the headline that jumps out hugely, there was a multi-month period at the height of Obama's drone war in Afghanistan where 90% of those killed were not the intended targets.
And they think there won't be a continuation of blowback. I mean, what they don't measure will be how many people are involved, families are involved, and they have relatives and they have neighbors and all. And it is the drone, I think they said, has replaced Guantanamo as the best recruiting tool that ISIS has, and Al-Qaeda. Anything that they can see and demonstrate to the people, they just get very, very angry, and then they become violent, and then when they're violent and there's some vicious acts, and then we melt. We say, well, look, they killed somebody. They just lined up and killed them. Ruthless killings, but they never stop and think, what are they angry about? Well, you know, we bombed a wedding party. We bombed a hospital. Yeah. We killed innocent people, and then almost inevitably, this should be an insult to all of us, we who pay and those who receive. They say, oh, well, we killed them, we're going to give them a benefit. And it's that to me is such an insult. They give them a few $1,000 and say, well, we're sorry about that. Yeah. And sometimes they don't even say they're sorry.
Yeah, don't be irritated. Can you imagine any American who loves their child or loves their children, how you'd feel in that situation? But, you know, the U.S. War on ISIS in Syria and Iraq has not gone very well. They've not hit a lot of targets in a year of, I think, 20,000 sorties. And we've seen in comparison to the Russians, which have been far more aggressive, I think, and effective in it. So what makes them think, do you think, that they will somehow defeat ISIS now in Cameroon?
No, and what makes them think that there's going to be more friends because we don't have boots on the ground? Well, we have boots surrounding, and we're there, and we're involved, but we're just not there in the trenches shooting, and Americans getting killed. American leadership thinks that if we don't see any American soldiers being killed, which is a good goal, of course, but that all of a sudden the hostilities will be minimal, that we won't have to worry about it as much. But I think the hatred's built just the same. I mean, we're not losing military personnel in Syria, but just think there might be who knows how many factions there are, which factions are really trustworthy, that it doesn't gain support. And yet we pump all this energy in, even though we didn't march in and take over and say, well, they are clear cut, they've just taken over the government like we did in Iraq. That became very clear, and that was a total failure. But it just is so bewildering to look at the results, and the people don't wake up, and the Congress don't wake up, and yet the dedicated neocon said, well, we agree with you, this is not a good result, and we predicted this because you have to go in with full force. You can't mess around with 10,000 troops. You got to go out all the way. And so that is the argument. But too many Americans are too complacent. Well, what can I do about it? And they're worried about the consequences here at home, because the wealth is shrinking, and we stay on all these same economic policies, and they're angry at the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and there's a military industrial complex, and there's a banking industrial complex, a medical industrial complex, and it's just splitting the country up. And I always go back to the clear understanding of economic policy that contributes to this. It isn't like capitalism is evil, free markets are bad because rich people get all the money and we have to curtail that. And you hear this in presidential campaigns, and socialists actually get honest attention from multitudes of people. Well, it is true that we have a task before us. We do have this whole idea that there's a contest going on between those who want to use authoritarianism and those who would opt for liberty. And of course, right now the authoritarians seem to be in charge, but I keep arguing the case that the 20th century showed that authoritarianism, fascism, and communism failed. This century, we're going to see currently the failure of Keynesianism and even the interventionist foreign policy that we have with us today. Our troops will be coming home, and it won't be because we have all of a sudden a good vote in the House and the Senate and have the right president there. They're going to come home because this country is going bankrupt. But the sooner we can do that, the better, and the sooner we can call these people who are always willing to cover one bad mistake by producing another problem. We need to break this up. The sooner, the better. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Liberty Report, and please come back soon.